The object in his pocket could have blacked out the entire block. Not one camera, not one neighbor's Ring doorbell, the entire block. That is what investigators spent the better part of March chasing, a question so specific, so technically precise, so operationally significant, that the FBI sent agents door to door through an 84-year-old woman's quiet neighborhood in Tucson's Catalina foothills, knocking on doors and asking the same question to every homeowner they could find. Did your internet go out on the night of February 1st? That question, that specific, documented, official investigative question, is the detail that changes everything about how we understand the surveillance evidence in this case. It is the detail that transforms the object visible in the suspect's pocket from an unexplained item of clothing into a potential tactical device that investigators now believe may have been deployed specifically to blind the neighborhood around Nancy Guthrie's home in the critical window before, during, and after she was taken. It is the detail that forced investigators to acknowledge, for the first time, that the surveillance disruption on the night of February 1st may not have been random equipment failure, may not have been a coincidence of technical timing, but may instead represent deliberate, planned, technically sophisticated interference with the digital surveillance infrastructure of an entire neighborhood. And it is the detail, when you understand what investigators now believe that object in his pocket was, when you understand what retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer concluded the moment she zoomed into that surveillance footage, that makes the official characterization of this crime as a standard kidnapping for financial gain collapse in an entirely new direction. This is not a video about whether Nancy Guthrie was taken. The blood on her front porch, confirmed as hers by forensic testing according to official Pima County Sheriff's Department statements, settled that question on the first day. This is a video about how sophisticated the person who took her actually was, and what that level of technical sophistication tells us about who investigators are looking for. Before any analysis, any theory, any evidence, we need to understand who this investigation is about, because the moment she becomes an abstraction, the moment she becomes a forensic case file or a media story rather than a person, we lose the most important thing about this entire investigation. Nancy Long Guthrie was born on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky, according to public records and family statements. She turned 84 years old just 4 days before she disappeared. She raised 3 children in Arizona over more than 5 decades, Annie, Savannah, and Cameron. She became a grandmother. She attended game nights with friends. She kept Sunday church appointments by video call when she could not attend in person, according to reporting on her weekly routines documented in coverage of her disappearance. Her daughter Savannah described her in an emotional video released on February 13, 2026. According to CNN's coverage of the statement, Savannah called her mother a kind, faithful, loyal, and fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. She described grandchildren who adore their grandmother and crowd around her and cover her with kisses. That grandmother was taken from her home in the pre-dawn hours of February 1, 2026, according to the official timeline established by the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI, and she has not been found. As of March 15, 2026, according to official statements from the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI, no suspect has been publicly named, no arrest has been made. A dedicated task force now works this case full-time. The investigation is active. And the question of what that object in the suspect's pocket actually was, and what it means for how this crime was planned and executed, is now at the center of where the investigation has moved. Now, before we examine every piece of what investigators have learned about that object and what the digital evidence confirms about the night of February 1st, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell right now. Here at The Silenced Case, we do not speculate. We examine the documented evidence, the confirmed official statements, and the investigative patterns that experienced law enforcement recognizes, even when the public hasn't yet caught up with what the evidence is actually showing. New investigations and case updates every week. If you think the internet disruptions on the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared were a coincidence, Watch this video first, then decide. Hit the like button and tell me in the comments, do you believe that object in his pocket was a signal jammer, a walkie-talkie, or something else entirely? Tell me what you think it was and why. The question the FBI was asking in early March of 2026 was not abstract. It was not speculative. It was a specific, documented investigative line that agents pursued with enough seriousness to go door to door through the Catalina Foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona, according to reporting by NBC News that documented those interviews. Several homeowners confirmed to investigators that they had experienced disruptions or issues with their internet connection on the night of February 1st, according to what Fox News Digital reported of those accounts. One neighbor, speaking to NBC News, described a security camera on their property, the one closest to Nancy Guthrie's home, as having footage that was marked simply not available during the overnight hours when Nancy was taken. That neighbor described the timing as uncanny, according to what NBC News documented of the account. Uncanny is not the same as confirmed. Investigators do not make their cases on uncanny, they make their cases on evidence. And the evidence that sent FBI agents door to door was not just a neighbor's missing footage, it was the combination of that missing footage with something else, something that had been visible in the FBI's own surveillance footage since the moment they released it to the public, an object in the suspect's pocket. To understand why that object matters, you need to understand what experienced digital forensics investigators know about Wi-Fi jamming technology, not what the public assumes about it, but what the documented technical record of how these devices actually operate reveals. Wi-Fi jammers are devices that emit radio frequency signals specifically designed to interfere with wireless internet communications. They are illegal to operate in the United States under Federal Communications Commission guidelines according to established FCC regulatory standards. They are not particularly sophisticated technology. They can be obtained online. They are not the province of intelligence agencies alone. They have been documented in use by organized criminal burglary groups in the United States, according to what retired police detective and Colorado Attorney General's Office executive Lisa Miller described to Fox News Digital in her analysis of this case. But here is what the technical baseline actually establishes about how these devices work, and why investigators had to take the neighbor's account seriously. Commercial jammers, the kind that can be purchased or obtained through channels available to non-government actors, have a range of approximately 10 to 30 yards from the source of the signal, according to what Morgan Wright, CEO and founder of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases, described in his public analysis of this case for Fox News Digital. At maximum proximity, meaning directly adjacent to a targeted wireless router, a commercial jammer can produce what Wright described as a total blackout of that specific device's connectivity. As distance from the router increases, the effect diminishes from total blackout to disruption, lag, and intermittent signal failure rather than complete loss. This is the technical baseline. This is what the documented record of how these devices operate actually shows. Now apply that baseline to the specific evidence in the Nancy Guthrie case. The doorbell camera on Nancy Guthrie's front porch disconnected at 1:47 a.m. on February 1st, according to the precise timestamp that Sheriff Chris Nanos presented at his February 5th press conference. According to the FBI's own analysis, someone physically disconnected that device. The footage recovered by the FBI, recovered according to reporting from Google's backend servers rather than from the device itself, because Nancy did not have a cloud storage subscription, but the device briefly synced before disconnection, showed a masked individual at the front door at 1:52 a.m. That footage did not appear glitchy. It did not appear distorted. According to what retired Detective Miller told Fox News Digital, the video of the suspect at the porch showed no visual characteristics associated with Wi-Fi signal interference. This is the first place the jammer theory encounters a complication. If a Wi-Fi jammer had been deployed against Nancy Guthrie's front door camera from a distance of several feet, the distance at which a commercial jammer would produce total blackout, The video from that camera should show signal degradation, glitching, visual artifacts, the kind of interference that investigators and security professionals recognize immediately from documented cases where jammers were deployed against similar devices. It did not show that, which created a specific investigative question. If the doorbell camera footage does not show jammer interference, what explains the neighbor's missing footage? And what explains the reports of internet disruption across multiple homes in the neighborhood during that same window? According to what the investigation established through its door-to-door canvass, multiple neighbors confirmed experiencing connectivity issues on the night of February 1st, according to reporting by Fox News Digital and NBC News on the results of the FBI's neighborhood survey. Not one neighbor, multiple. The pattern of those disruptions across more than one property during the specific overnight window that aligns with the timeline of Nancy Guthrie's abduction is what elevated this from a single neighbor's account to an investigative lead that warranted dedicated federal attention. And that is when investigators found the utility box. According to reporting confirmed by the Pima County Sheriff's Department in official statements, investigators identified a damaged utility box located around the corner from Nancy Guthrie's home in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood. According to what Newsweek reported of the investigation's status on March 11, 2026, the Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed it is actively investigating that utility box for a possible connection to the internet outage that occurred around the time of Nancy's disappearance. An outage that disrupted nearby home surveillance cameras during the window when investigators believe she was taken. A damaged utility box around the corner from her home, damaged in a way that investigators believe may connect to a neighborhood-wide internet disruption on the specific night she was abducted. According to what retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer posted publicly in her analysis of this development, the question she asked immediately was direct: did the perpetrators tamper with a nearby electrical infrastructure box? Coffindaffer noted that the possibility makes sense and confirmed the FBI is investigating it, according to her public statement documented in media coverage of her analysis. Think about what that means specifically for this case. Not a handheld device pointed at a single router from a distance of 30 yards, not a commercial jammer operating at the limits of its technical range. A potentially targeted intervention with physical infrastructure, a utility box positioned around the corner from the residence, in a location that would not require proximity to the target, that would not produce the visual interference patterns that would appear in doorbell footage, and that could produce a cascading connectivity disruption affecting multiple homes simultaneously. This is not the same theory as a commercial Wi-Fi jammer. This is something categorically different, something that requires prior knowledge of the neighborhood's utility infrastructure, something that requires knowing which box controls the connectivity for which block. The kind of knowledge that does not come from driving past a neighborhood once. The kind of knowledge that develops through operational familiarity with the specific environment of the target. According to what the investigation has documented through the neighbor survey, the timing of the disruptions and the location of the damaged utility box, investigators are now examining whether the technological disruption of that neighborhood on the night of February 1st was not incidental to the crime, but part of its planning. Every investigation into residential crime benefits from a professional baseline about what normal surveillance disruption looks like. And here is what experienced digital forensics investigators know. Random equipment failures produce localized outages. A router malfunctions. A cable service experiences a node failure. A device loses power. These events affect specific households, sometimes specific devices, in ways that do not cluster into geographic patterns around a particular time window. When investigators identify multiple homes reporting connectivity disruptions during the same narrow overnight window, centering on the same neighborhood, coinciding with a documented crime, the professional baseline says that pattern is not random. According to what Wright told Fox News Digital, A military-grade or high-powered jammer capable of affecting multiple homes across a city block would be a substantial piece of equipment, larger, more powerful, more difficult to obtain and transport than the commercial devices documented in typical residential burglary cases. The presence of the damaged utility box represents an alternative explanation that does not require military-grade equipment. Physical intervention with existing infrastructure could achieve neighborhood-wide connectivity disruption without the visual signature that handheld RF devices leave on electronic footage. The investigative significance of this distinction cannot be overstated. Because the object in the suspect's pocket, the specific item visible in the FBI's surveillance footage, now exists in a different investigative context than it did before the utility box was found. And that is where retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer made the identification that changed how investigators and analysts were framing the entire digital disruption question. According to what Coffindaffer wrote publicly in a statement documented by Newsweek, she was reviewing the surveillance footage frame by frame when she noticed a specific shape in the suspect's pants pocket. According to her account, she saw what appeared to be a square shape, and then an antenna protruding from the pants pocket of who she called Porch Guy. That observation led her to a conclusion that she stated directly in public analysis covered by multiple news organizations. It was not a Wi-Fi jammer. According to what Coffindaffer assessed publicly, documented by Newsweek and other outlets covering her analysis, it appeared to be a walkie-talkie. A walkie-talkie. According to what Coffindaffer stated in a public post documented by Newsweek, this is likely why geofencing has perhaps been a dead end, providing no usable leads. Walkie-talkies, she wrote, are the untraceable way to communicate. According to her professional assessment, the suspect and his likely accomplices may not look sophisticated, but they were. Think about what walkie-talkie communication means for every investigative thread this case has developed. Cell tower data is one of the most powerful forensic tools available to modern investigators. The FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey Team, known as CAST, specializes in extracting and analyzing exactly this data. According to what digital forensics expert Heather Barnhart, who helped investigate the University of Idaho student murders and has extensive experience with the Cellebrite platform, described to NBC News and Fox News Digital in her analysis of the Guthrie case, the FBI's CAST unit has been actively analyzing cell tower data from an extensive area surrounding Nancy's Catalina foothills neighborhood. According to Barnhart's analysis documented by multiple outlets, the investigative approach is specific. Investigators are analyzing data profiles of typical and unusual phone activity, searching for anomalies that could provide the breakthrough the investigation needs. Every phone that pinged a cell tower within a meaningful radius of Nancy Guthrie's home between 10 p.m. on January 31st and 6 a.m. on February 1st generated a record, according to what legal analyst and law enforcement expert Cummings described to Newsweek in his analysis of the investigation's digital forensics priorities. According to Cummings, carriers retain that data, and the FBI obtained it weeks ago. The silence on what that data revealed, Cummings noted publicly, is itself interesting. And here is where Coffindaffer's walkie-talkie assessment intersects directly with that silence. If the person or persons who took Nancy Guthrie were using walkie-talkies to communicate rather than cellular devices, if they arrived at that neighborhood with their phones powered off or in airplane mode or left behind entirely, then the cell tower data for that specific window may show exactly what professional investigators call a void, the absence of anomalous pings, the absence of devices that appear in the area once during a narrow window and then disappear. According to what Coffindaffer stated publicly, documented by Newsweek, it seems like possibly they were communicating by walkie-talkie, which would not register on a cell tower and could not be used to triangulate what cell phones were there. Her professional belief, she stated, is that they were sophisticated enough not to use cell phones. This is documented behavioral reality about sophisticated criminal operations, not theory. Brian Koberger, the individual convicted in the Idaho student murders, reportedly placed his phone in airplane mode and took measures to obscure his digital footprint in the hours surrounding the crime. According to what digital forensics expert Barnhart described to Fox News Digital, the same expert who analyzed evidence in that case, the loudest evidence can be the lack of evidence. A phone that goes dark in a specific geographic area during a specific time window, or that simply never appears near the target at all because it was never brought, tells investigators something. The absence of a signal is itself a signal. For the Nancy Guthrie investigation, the combination of Coffindaffer's walkie-talkie assessment with the known cell tower silence raises a specific investigative question that the cast analysis is designed to answer. Was there any anomalous cellular activity in the neighborhood on prior occasions? On dates when the suspect may have been conducting surveillance of the property in advance of February 1st? According to what Barnhart described publicly, the investigation should not limit its analysis to the night of the crime. Unless these people knew exactly where they were going, she noted, their phone will be off and then suddenly ping. Not just cell towers right by Nancy's home, but taking it a few miles out, spreading out, and looking for outliers in normal tower behavior. Barnhart stated directly what experienced investigators understand about digital forensics in cases of this type. Your phone is the silent witness to your life. It knows everything you do, forming those patterns and then looking for any anomaly of someone trying to hide their digital footprint is key. The person who spent 41 minutes inside Nancy Guthrie's home had been there before, in some capacity, under some circumstances. The behavioral evidence of that 41-minute comfort level establishes this with professional certainty according to what forensic analysts have documented publicly. And if they had been there before, surveilling the property, confirming the utility infrastructure location, mapping the camera coverage, their presence on prior visits may have left exactly the kind of anomalous tower ping that the cast analysis is designed to find. And this is where the two investigative threads, the digital disruption question and the cell tower analysis, converge on a single operational conclusion. The FBI recovered footage from Nancy Guthrie's Google Nest doorbell camera, despite the physical destruction of that device. According to what reporting documented of the FBI's recovery process, the footage came from Google's back-end servers, a brief window of synchronization before the device was disabled. But here is the forensic detail that matters most for understanding both the jammer theory and the walkie-talkie assessment. If a commercial Wi-Fi jammer had been operating at sufficient strength to fully disable that device's internet connectivity in the moments before the masked individual appeared on camera, the device would not have synced its final footage to Google's servers. The sync requires an active internet connection. The footage existed on Google's servers because the device maintained connectivity long enough to transmit it. This is not a minor technical detail, this is evidence. The doorbell camera maintained internet connectivity right up to the moment it was physically disconnected by the suspect. A Wi-Fi jammer operating in close proximity to that device with sufficient strength to produce a total blackout would have prevented that final sync. The footage would have been lost. It was not lost, which means the object in the suspect's pocket was not being operated as a Wi-Fi jammer against Nancy Guthrie's specific doorbell camera in the moment he stood at her door. According to what Wright confirmed to Fox News Digital, this is consistent with his technical assessment. The FBI and Google were able to recover video from Nancy Guthrie's Nest doorbell camera. That fact weakens the theory that a Wi-Fi jammer was deployed specifically at her front door. But it does not weaken the theory that the utility box disruption affected the neighboring property's surveillance systems. And it does not weaken Coffindaffer's walkie-talkie assessment. Because if the object in his pocket was a walkie-talkie, a communication device rather than a disruption device, then the neighborhood blackout and the object in his pocket are two separate operational elements of the same planned operation. The utility box handles the surveillance disruption. The walkie-talkie handles the coordination. And the person standing at Nancy Guthrie's front door handles neither of those things personally. He handles the target. Two different mechanisms, two different roles, one operation. The neighbor who reported missing footage from their Ring camera, the one closest to Nancy's home, experienced the effects of the utility box intervention, not a device pointed at their specific property. If the utility box was tampered with in a way that disrupted the internet service provider's infrastructure for that block, multiple devices would lose connectivity simultaneously. A Ring camera that cannot reach the cloud cannot store footage. If the disruption lasted long enough to cover the critical window of the abduction, the footage would simply not exist. That is exactly what happened. The neighbor's Ring camera history shows footage marked not available, according to what NBC News documented of the neighbor's account. Not deleted, not corrupted, not available. Because it was never stored. Because the connectivity required to store it was not there during the window when it would have captured something. And now there is a fourth piece of this digital evidence picture that connects directly to the question of whether more than one person was involved in this operation. According to what the Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed in official statements covered by Yahoo News on March 14, 2026, the FBI has recovered additional images from security cameras at Nancy Guthrie's property. Cameras covering the pool, the backyard, and the side yard. Those images are thumbnails only. No video footage was recovered from them. The images captured people in the yard area before the abduction, but according to what reporting documented of the official account, nothing appeared suspicious in those images. People in the yard area before the abduction. The investigation is examining who those people were when those images were captured and whether their presence in the yard on prior occasions connects to the operational planning that the rest of the evidence indicates took place. This connects to something that retired FBI Special Agent Maureen O'Connell told News Nation in her analysis. She believes more than one person was involved in the operation that took Nancy Guthrie from her home. O'Connell pointed specifically to the operational complexity of what the evidence shows happened on the morning of February 1st. One person would need to physically interact with Nancy, an 84-year-old woman with limited mobility, but a woman who was mentally sharp and cognitively clear, according to what Sheriff Nanos confirmed publicly. A woman who knew exactly what was happening when someone entered her home. Simultaneously, that same person would need to manage the security environment. The doorbell camera, the interior cameras, the exits from the property, the route from the scene. According to what O'Connell stated in her News Nation analysis, the blood evidence adds a dimension that reinforces the multiple-person theory. Droplets of blood confirmed as Nancy Guthrie's were found on the front porch of her home. O'Connell noted the absence of voids in that blood pattern. In forensic blood stain analysis, a void is a gap in a spatter pattern created by an object or a person's feet, interrupting the distribution of blood as it falls. If Nancy Guthrie had walked through that blood pattern under her own power, her footsteps would have created voids. According to O'Connell's analysis documented by News Nation, no such voids were present. Her professional conclusion was that Nancy was likely carried or transported from the residence rather than walking out under her own power. A person who cannot walk under her own power does not move herself. She must be moved by someone, and the person moving her cannot simultaneously be managing the route, watching for witnesses, maintaining coordination with the timeline of their departure. More than one person. The walkie-talkie in his pocket is not just evidence of sophistication. It is evidence of coordination, of a second presence in that neighborhood, outside the camera's view, monitoring the approach, managing the timing. Who needed real-time communication with the person at the door? Communication that would not appear on any cell tower. Communication that leaves no digital record for the cast unit to find. Communication that was specifically chosen for exactly that reason. According to what Coffindaffer stated publicly and what the evidence now supports from multiple directions, he and his cohorts, and she used that word specifically, may not look sophisticated, but they were. The timeline established by all of this digital evidence shows what the sequence looked like. Nancy Guthrie was last seen at approximately 9:50 p.m. on January 31st, according to what her family documented and investigators confirmed. At 1:47 a.m. on February 1st, according to the precise timestamp Sheriff Nanos presented publicly, the doorbell camera disconnected. The FBI's recovered footage showed a masked individual at the front door at 1:52 a.m. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker tracking application lost its connection to her phone, according to what the official investigation timeline documented. Her phone was later found inside the home. The span between camera disconnection at 1:47 a.m. and pacemaker signal loss at 2:28 a.m. is 41 minutes. Those 41 minutes, documented, timestamped, confirmed, represent the window during which whatever happened inside Nancy Guthrie's home happened. The window during which whoever was there was there. And if investigators are correct that the utility box disruption affected neighboring surveillance during that same overnight window, then the 41 minutes of documented presence inside that home occurred within a digital blackout zone that someone appears to have deliberately created. Not one camera disabled, an entire neighborhood's surveillance coverage potentially compromised, and a walkie-talkie providing real-time coordination between at least two individuals operating in silence, leaving no cellular trace, following a protocol specifically designed to defeat the digital forensic tools that investigators use. There is one more investigative development from the past week that the documented record requires addressing directly. For the first time since February 13, 2026, the night a multi-agency operation resulted in 3 individuals being detained near a location approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. One of those individuals has spoken publicly. According to reporting by Arizona's family documented across multiple outlets, Luke Daly, who was detained and questioned by the FBI in connection with the investigation, gave an interview to true crime correspondent Brianna Whitney. According to what that interview documented, Daly said directly, "It is not me." He told the interviewer that he does not see the resemblance of the doorbell footage suspect looking like him. He said he does not know who is involved in the disappearance and stated that if he did, he would happily tell authorities. Daly was detained and later released without charges, according to what the Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed in official statements, consistent with the constitutional protections that apply to anyone detained but not arrested. No charges were filed. His speaking publicly does not change the investigative status of the case. But his account is part of the documented record of this investigation, and the audience of this channel deserves to understand it in full. The investigation has not publicly named any suspect. No arrest has been announced. The families of anyone detained and released without charges retain the presumption of innocence under law. These are the facts of the documented record as of March 15, 2026. Now back to where the evidence actually points. According to what the investigative pattern shows, the technical sophistication of this operation and the insider knowledge it required narrow the investigation in ways that stranger crime theories cannot. Step back from individual developments, from specific timestamps and specific forensic findings. Look at the entire digital disruption evidence as a whole. An object in his pocket identified by a retired FBI special agent as consistent with a walkie-talkie, a communication device specifically chosen because it leaves no cell tower record. A utility box around the corner from the home, damaged, under active investigation for connection to a neighborhood-wide internet outage. Multiple neighbors confirming connectivity disruptions during the critical window. Ring camera footage from the property nearest the scene, marked not available during the time of the abduction. FBI cast agents conducting systematic analysis of cell tower data, specifically looking for anomalous pings and finding a silence where activity should exist. Thumbnail images recovered from yard cameras showing people in Nancy Guthrie's yard area before the abduction. A pacemaker signal lost at 2:28 a.m., 8 minutes before a vehicle appears on camera 2.5 miles away. And 41 minutes of documented presence inside the home of an 84-year-old woman. 41 minutes of confident, operational, unhurried presence that speaks not to improvisation, but to preparation. Every one of these elements points in the same direction. Every one of them is inconsistent with a criminal who stumbled upon an opportunity. Every one of them is consistent with someone who understood the target's environment, the home, the neighborhood, the infrastructure, the digital coverage, well enough to plan around all of it, well enough to choose a communication method that leaves no trace, well enough to identify and disable the neighborhood's internet infrastructure rather than relying on a handheld device with a 30-yard range. According to what Coffindaffer stated publicly, what O'Connell confirmed from her professional assessment, and what the entire digital evidence pattern supports, this was not one person acting alone. This was a coordinated operation. The object in his pocket was the instrument of that coordination, and whoever was on the other end of that walkie-talkie was part of this from the beginning. The reward in this case now stands at over $1.2 million, according to what official statements confirm. $1 million from the Guthrie family, payable in cash, as Savannah Guthrie has confirmed publicly. $100,000 from the FBI, and additional amounts from the 88 crime tip line, according to what reporting on the reward structure documented. According to what retired FBI Special Agent O'Connell assessed publicly, $1 million changes someone's world, and whoever was on the other end of that walkie-talkie knows that the person who knows about them is thinking about it right now. As of March 15, 2026, the investigation is active. The task force is working full-time. The mixed DNA analysis from the property continues. The utility box examination continues. The cast cell tower analysis continues. The video enhancement work continues. The tip line remains open at 1-800-CALL-FBI. The Pima County Sheriff's Department can be reached at 520-351-4900. 43 days have passed since Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home. 43 days of questions about a damaged utility box around the corner, of neighbors describing missing footage, of FBI agents going door to door through Tucson's Catalina foothills, of an object in a suspect's pocket, now identified by a retired FBI special agent with decades of experience, that a person brought into that neighborhood specifically because it would not leave the kind of trace that investigators spend careers learning to find. But the evidence in this case is still being built. According to what the dedicated task force's existence confirms, this investigation has not slowed. It has focused. The resources have not been reduced. They have been concentrated. 4 detectives and a sergeant working exclusively on this, stationed at the FBI's own office, working alongside federal agents with the full weight of the Bureau's analytical capabilities, including the cast cell tower specialists and the video forensic enhancement unit that has been working this case since February 12th. Nancy Guthrie attended game nights and kept her Sunday church appointments by video. She raised 3 children in Arizona over 5 decades. She became a grandmother whose grandchildren crowded around her and covered her with kisses, according to what her daughter Savannah described in a statement her family released while still hoping. She deserves to come home. Her family deserves answers. And the evidence in this case, the object in his pocket, the utility box, the missing footage, the walkie-talkie, the cell tower silence, is still pointing somewhere specific. Because whoever planned an operation sophisticated enough to use a walkie-talkie instead of a phone, sophisticated enough to disable a neighborhood's internet infrastructure rather than point a jammer at a single door, sophisticated enough to coordinate 2 or more people through a window of 41 minutes without leaving a cellular trace. That person made choices. Deliberate, documented, forensically recoverable choices, and every choice leaves something behind. The kind of something that 10,000 hours of surveillance footage, a dedicated forensic genealogy analysis, a utility box examination, a cast cell tower review spanning weeks of prior dates, and a door-to-door canvass of the Catalina foothills are specifically designed to find. The investigation continues. This investigation has been presented with complete respect for Nancy Guthrie and her family. Every analysis presented here is grounded in official law enforcement statements, court documents, and verified reporting from national news organizations, including Fox News Digital, NBC News, News Nation, ABC News, CNN, Newsweek, the Arizona Republic, and Yahoo News. The frameworks presented are investigative tools, not conclusions about any individual's guilt. No individual has been named as a suspect by law enforcement, and the presumption of innocence applies to every person referenced in this video who has not been charged with a crime. If this investigation moved you, subscribe to The Silenced Case. Hit that notification bell, because here we do not speculate. We examine what the evidence actually shows, and in this case, the evidence was never meant to be found.